What's up everybody, Commander Sanctum here, and today we have a brand new deck tech using Ragost Deft Gastronaut. Ragost is a 2/2 Lobster citizen for red-white that has artifacts you control or foods in addition to their other types. Pay 1, tap Ragost and sacrifice a food to deal 3 damage to each opponent, and at the beginning of each end step, if you gained life this turn, untap Ragost. I've really been enjoying the mechanic of turning objects into food, and Ragost has likely become my favorite one. There's so many cool aspects to this card. The fact that it lets us more easily gain life, acts as a win con in itself with its tap ability, and just the fact that it's a very unique Boros colored commander. For this deck tech, we'll be trying to make as much food as possible, while also using mechanics that let us untap Ragost each turn to really maximize the burn potential with his ability. With that, let's get into the card highlights. Since we care about getting as many artifacts as possible, since they'll all be food, we can focus part of our strategy on the trifecta of artifact tokens: treasure, clues, and of course, actual food tokens. To start with, we have quite a few options for treasure tokens. Descent into Avernus and Brass's Bounty both create a ton of treasures in one fell swoop, with the Bounty doing it one time and the Descent ramping up the number of tokens each turn. The best part of Descent is that it also works well with our burn theme, since it'll be another great source of opponent damage. Prize Statue only creates 1 token on entry, but since it'll be a food with Ragost out, it makes for a great sacrifice fodder to him in order to get the second treasure from it. Since we're already a heavy artifact deck, Glowing Dwarf Emissary can be a great, albeit slow, source of consistent treasure tokens for us. For clues, we have Case of the Pilfered Proof, of which we only really care about its solved ability. The fact that we're already making a lot of tokens means that getting all those tokens plus a clue each time makes it very easy for us to amass clues very quickly. Sierra, Nuka's biggest fan, is not only a food source generator, but also can act as an additional win con, since we'll be able to pump up creatures very easily with her second ability. The fact that a food just needs to be sacrificed, not necessarily to its own ability, but also to Ragost's activated ability, means it'll be very easy to get it to trigger every turn, potentially multiple times if we wanted to. Nuka-Cola Vending Machine is very similar to Sierra, where it's both a food token generator and has an effect whenever a food is sacrificed. In this case, it'll net us a treasure token whenever we sacrifice a food, working perfectly in our overall token and artifact theme. Of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit does pretty much everything. It generates us food, draws us a card, and has the potential to make a huge halfling army, since all of our artifacts will count towards the overall food count for its third ability. Academy Manufacturer is the de facto card for the artifact token trifecta, since it'll net us extra tokens of treasures, clues, or foods whenever we create them. Unfortunately, due to the way that it's worded and the fact that it says create tokens, means that Ragost's type changing ability won't trigger it due to how objects are created versus existing on the battlefield, but it's still very good in a deck like this. Beyond the non-creature artifact tokens, we also have multiple ways to make actual creature tokens that are also artifacts. Stridehanger Automaton is similar to Case of the Pilfered Proof in that it modifies what gets created whenever an artifact token is created. In this case, an additional 1/1 artifact Thopter is created, which can help us make a huge flying army by simply playing to our strategy of artifact tokens. Loyal Apprentice is a great way to make sure you always have sacrifice fodder for Ragost on each of your turns, since having both cards out will automatically give you an artifact token in the form of a 1/1 Thopter on your combat step. Osgir the Reconstructor is a great way to not only reanimate your best artifacts from your graveyard to get more use out of them, but also give you more Ragost fodder in cases where you absolutely need it to close out the game. Apothecary White is a great way to get a bunch of food tokens on your turn, so long as you have ways to attack all of your opponents, but really shines with its Senket ability, letting you effectively tap all your artifacts to make an army of 1/1 human tokens. Unfortunately, these tokens aren't artifacts, so they don't interact with Ragost, but it's still a great alternative win con, or a way to get some blockers out to keep you alive longer. White Sun's Twilight does pretty much everything we want. It can act as a board wipe if need be, while also giving us a bunch of artifact creature tokens and gaining us life to make sure we can untap Ragost at the end of the turn. Ragost has such a low CMC that honestly, using this as a board wipe most of the time will likely be an effective strategy, even though Ragost will die from it. We also have Circuit Mender and Filigree Familiar, which both act as efficient fodder to sacrifice to Ragost. They both do the same thing of gaining life when they enter and drawing you a card when they die, which are both things you want to be doing in a Ragost strategy. They may not look like much, but never underestimate cards like these that synergize so well with your strategy. Speaking of synergy, we have a few cards that work very well with our overall strategies of artifact creation and burn. These are Reckless Fireweaver, Ingenious Artillerist, and Weftstalker Ardent, which all do pretty much the same thing of dealing damage to your opponents whenever an artifact enters under our control. Honestly, these are going to be some of the best cards in the deck, since they maximize our strategy to its full potential, all for free if they're already out on the battlefield. In order to activate Ragost every turn, including your opponent's turns, we need to make sure we can consistently gain life every cycle. One of the best ways to do this is via lifelink, since Ragost itself does the damage when he's activated. Basilisk Collar and Spirit Loop are examples of this, both gaining you life whenever the equipped or attached creature deals damage. Spirit Loop also isn't even technically lifelink, since it's its own triggered ability, meaning it will stack the life gain if the creature already has the actual keyword lifelink. Sun Droplet works a little bit differently. By taking damage, you'll get charge counters, which can then be expended on each upkeep to gain 1 life. As long as you're taking damage, whether it be from yourself with cards like Descent into Avernus or from your opponents, you'll be able to consistently gain life from this card on each upkeep to make sure Ragost can untap. Since it's also an artifact, it'll be food and can even be sacrificed to Ragost if need be. Since we're so reliant on Ragost for his abilities, he's likely going to have a huge target on his back from your opponents. Due to this, we have to make sure we provide some level of protection for him against removal. Lightning Greaves is the de facto card to do this, while also giving him haste, letting you use his ability as soon as you play and equip him. Restoration Magic is a great way to protect him from either targeted removal or from destruction-based board wipes, making it an all-around great protection spell that can even gain you life to untap him if need be. Reprieve isn't direct protection, but can be a good way to counter a board wipe or removal spell if the opponent taps out for it. Since it also replaces itself by drawing a card, it makes it an effective, albeit more restricted, counterspell. Since we're sacrificing artifacts, a lot of which will be non-tokens, having some graveyard recursion effects can come in handy to get them back into play. Wake the Past is likely the best one for us, since it returns all of your artifacts from the graveyard, and only yours. Open the Vaults is another mass artifact recursion with the added benefit of also returning enchantments, but affects everyone, not just you. Due to this, Open the Vaults will need to be used strategically, since you'll need to make sure it benefits you the most and not one of your opponents. Finally, there are a number of good utility cards that work well with our overall themes. Drumbellower and Sting the Glinting Dagger are alternative ways to get Ragost to untap each turn without having to gain life. Sting is especially nice since it'll also give Ragost haste, letting you use his ability twice in the turn you play and equip him, so long as you first activate him during the pre-combat main phase. Togo Goblin Weaponsmith has a landfall ability that makes a unique, and honestly probably my favorite, artifact token named Rock. While we don't really care about the Rock's ability, the fact that we have another token source of artifacts that can be sacrificed to Ragost makes it a great include. Torbrand Thane of Redfell is a great way to increase the damage done by Ragost, as well as the creatures that deal damage whenever an artifact enters, amplifying the burn component of the deck rather significantly. Illusionist Bracers is another great way to amplify Ragost's burn damage, since activating his ability with them equipped will make him do 6 damage to each opponent instead of the normal 3. Treasure Nabber is probably my favorite card in a deck like this, since it'll let you steal your opponent's mana rocks that can then, in turn, be sacrificed to Ragost's ability. The fact that you can activate Ragost without even having to use your own resources makes this an absolutely A+ card in the deck. We also have a few ways to make our spells cheaper to cast when having a large amount of artifacts. Sammy Wildcat Captain is the better of the two, since it reduces all spells by 1 for each artifact you control, making it so that a lot of our artifact cards may just be completely free if we already control enough of them. Inspiring Statuary works similarly, but requires you to tap the artifacts to pay for the cost, and only works when casting non-artifact spells. Still, there's enough non-artifact spells in the deck to warrant its include, especially since we're primarily looking to sacrifice artifacts rather than using them for their tap abilities. Here's an example deck list utilizing all the previously mentioned cards. Additional cards include card draw effects that also generate us artifact tokens in Unexpected Windfall and Big Score, artifact-based ramp that synergize well with Ragost in Solemn Simulacrum and Mycosynth Wellspring, and mana rocks that provide us additional synergistic utility in Patriarch's Seal, Liquimetal Torque, Pristine Talisman, and Victory Chimes. I'm always a sucker for uniquely themed Boros commanders, and Ragost definitely fits this criteria. I've also really been enjoying this objects become food theme that Wizards has started doing. Back in Bloomburrow, Ygra, who basically started this mechanic, was by far my favorite commander from the set, so I've enjoyed seeing them continue it with newer sets. Honestly, I think Ragost is even better than Ygra. The fact that it's so easy to actually win the game with him, with his activated ability paired with his untap ability, is what puts him over the top in terms of power. Turning all of your artifacts into a sweeping lightning bolt is really no joke, and the fact that you could do it on each player's turn, absolutely unreal. Yes, it does cost mana to do this, and it does require you to gain life to untap him, but these drawbacks are pretty easily remedied with various equipments and enchantments that we saw in the highlights. Honestly, the only real downside I can see to Ragost is that he's likely to draw a pretty big target on his back. It's so easy to abuse his abilities that most players will want to kill him as soon as he hits play. Since most of our deck is built around using him, if we can't protect him, it'll be much harder to win. Now, that's not to say that it'll be impossible, since we also have other damage effects and ways to make a good number of creature tokens, but it will definitely be harder. If you enjoy unique commanders, like to pair artifacts with the burn strategy, or just love a creature type of Lobster Citizen, then Ragost is definitely the commander for you. I hope you enjoyed watching this deck tech on Ragost Deft Gastronaut. The full deck list outlined in this video can be found at the Architect link at the top of the description. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like and comment, as well as subscribe to the channel for more Magic content. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.